Hi and welcome back to Danish Fly Tying's YouTube channel. Today we're going to tie this little fellow. It's a baitfish pattern that I have made or maybe been inspired to by others, but what's made this different for me is that the most moving parts of the baitfish is tied on top of the hook shank, and it's just dubbing underneath. And it has a tail here that gives it some nicer profile. Yeah, for this fly I have used ice bear fibers for the tail. You can also use bucktail if you want. That's a very good substitution for it. This is legal to buy, just so you know. And for the wing, or for the top of the fly, I'm gonna use some polar fiber. It's kind of craft fur, but I think that it's much softer in the fibers. Yeah, it's tied on a Stingerhook size 4 and some 4mm eyes for the head with some UV resin. Yeah, enough talk, let's tie it. This is what I want it to look like when we're done with this. So I have this Explorer Stingerhook in size 4, and I'm using a Veevus thread GSP 30 denier, and we're gonna lay a thread base here. Like this. It have taken me some while to get to this pattern, but I really think that it fish so good. And now for the tail. Actually, you can use a bucktail as well, but I'm using this kind of ice bear, which is legal. And I love these small things that you can prepare your materials on. And I have a bunch here. Take off the shortest one and the underfur, and I want a tail about 2.5, maybe 3 hook shanks long, tied down on top, and work your way to the hook eye. And cut off. Yeah, and now we are ready to make the rest of the fly. I'm gonna tie it down in section, maybe 5 sections or something like this, with something on the front, on the top, and something on the bottom. And on the top I like to use this polar fiber. It's kind of craft fur, but very soft. And for the underpart for this fly, I'm gonna use some SLF prism, and this color is called Ice Pearl. Yeah, but I'm gonna start with the top, and I'm using, to prepare my stuff here, I'm using, this is just some foam for some package, and I think you can see here I have made some slices in it, and you can prepare your flies with something like this, or you can buy maybe a much more expensive one in a fly shop. But yeah, this is the polar fiber. You can see it's very soft. And the first section is gonna be like the length of the ice bear, and I'm tying this on top. So when we're done, we're gonna have a very slim profile because we only tied on the top and on the bottom. Maybe like a millimeter up the hook shank, cut it off, and then we're ready for what's on the bottom. Is this ice pearl color, and I'm gonna take my fingers and straighten up the fibers, get the thread back to the tying point, and then we can tie it down here and hold your fingers and press about a couple of turns upwards, and then we can force it back and tie it in. If you can do this, you can tie this fly. For the section, or about in between the section, I'm gonna dub on a little bit of the same SLF prism. You can leave this out, but then you can see the hook shank. And I'm gonna use white and blue polar fiber for the top part. And again, I'm taking off the longest and the shortest fibers and lay this on top, about a centimeter shorter than the previous polar fiber. Tie it down, hold your fingers, pinch your fingers and press downwards. Then it's locked about a millimeter in front, and then we can cut it off. And the bottom part, force it on the bottom, on the other underside, and tie it backwards again. This is how I tie this fly, and you can skip until I make the head of the fly if you want. But what's important here is that to get the right profile of the fly, you have to take more and more of the longest fibers as you work your way up. So now I'm taking white again. Couple of turns, press downwards while you pinch. It had taken me a while to make this pattern because I've also used normal craft fur, and that works fine as well, but I just love these polar fibers for bait fish like this. But if you're tying on the underside of the fly, it's gonna tangle up. I have seen this because I did that on the older versions of it. And now it's some blue. Take off the longest. Like this. And if you have a shorter shank, of course you're gonna have fewer bunches. But I like to use the long hook shank because it you can get more sections in, and I think that looks very cool. This is in white and blue colors, made for seatrout fishing, or if you can also use it for sea bass as well. Maybe look like a little herring, but of course you can make it in other color variations, of course, and use craft fur as well if you have that. And one section more, then it's white. Like this. Get it on top, pinch, and press downwards. And another thing to get these, when you cut it off, a very nice thing to do is to turn the materials with your fingers, and then you can much more easily cut it off without getting some fibers left. Because I use a lot of these synthetic materials, it's not gonna soak up much water, and you can actually fish this pattern on a very light gear. I like to use a 4-weight, especially in the fjord, and this can also be fished on a 4-weight fly rod. Like this, a bit shorter. Now I'm about maybe 2 or 3 millimeters from the head. Oh, I forgot to cut the polar fiber off. Now we're gonna start thinking about the profile again. So you can make the sections a bit more close to each other when you're up here, and also I'm leaving out, well, I'm not taking as much underfur out of the polar fiber, or underfur, what you call it. It's synthetic, but I think you know what I mean. So actually I'm gonna take a more heavier bunch. Take off. This is quite short. Like this. Tie it down and cut it off. And I like to, for the gills, using some fluorescent orange or red dubbing. Like this. Tie it down. And now we are close to finishing the fly. And the last section I'm gonna tie in reverse. So for the top of the fly, I like to use some black materials. I've prepared a little bunch of black craft fur and taken off the shortest fibers like this. And I think I like the fibers almost as long as the fly itself. So because we're tying in reverse, I'm gonna tie it down first here on the top. Like this. Turn it, twist it as before, and cut off. That's one. Yes. And then I'm finishing with the blue polar fiber as well, so a bit heavier bunch, and then take off the longest fibers like this and tie it down. This time I'm working my way closer to the hook point when I'm tying it down like this. Yeah, that's for the top of the fly. And now I'm gonna get ready for the bottom part, and I'm taking the same kind of dubbing as well as before. This is maybe a bit too much, but taking some of the yeah, that's great. Tie it in, pinch it down. Like this, yeah. Just want to see if I have my zoom ready. Yeah, focus right. Yeah, and now I'm gonna use a straw I just had before. Where is that? I had a little straw for this. Okay, I'm taking a bit wider one. Yeah, you can use a straw. I have a straw that's bit smaller than this, but I can't find it now. It's okay. But as you get the point of it, you take it and then you press it down. And because we tied in that order, the black is gonna be on top. Oh, I could do it with my fingers. A couple of turns. See if you're happy with where it is. I think it's okay. Couple of turns and lock it down. This is gonna be covered in resin in a moment, so that's fine. Yeah, then we're gonna make a whip finish and cut it off. I'm using a black pin here on the top too, because you can see that through the UV resin. Now we're gonna make the head of the fly. I'm just giving a bit of thin UV resin first. While I pinch the head. It makes it easier. I don't know if you have the same thing as me here in the Rossetti Traveler. It's falling off, sorry. If we make a good start on this head, like a clean start, is going to be much easier when you're laying down the rest of the resin. And for the eyes, I'm using, I think it's a 4mm Pro Flexi eyes. Like this. And on the other side. And see if they're in the same place. This process is much for the fly fish and not that much for the fish. But I like to make it as clean as possible. And then I give, this is the medium resin, a drop on the top. Like this. Get it to soak in. And you can hold the fibers with your fingers while you give it while you cure it. And the same for the bottom part. You can hold the fibers back and cure it. This one, we're gonna trim it a bit on the other side, on the underside when we're finished. But now we're ready for the rest of the head. I'm laying like a millimeter behind the eyes and go up, and a millimeter behind the eyes. Then we can get it more even down to the hook eye. And for that I'm using a dubbing needle. Oh, this little bit irritates me, but I think it's okay. That's the thing with a macro lens, you see everything. But now we're gonna give it a little trim. sew this part, because if something's gonna tangle, it's the dubbing on the other side. And then we can give it a little brush so it looks good in the box. Yeah, that's quite it. So we have these sections, and this makes the fly do much less tangling than other patterns where you just put some craft fur on the top and on the bottom. So yeah, this is a fish fly, and because it's easy to fish and cast, and it's gonna catch some trouts for you, or maybe some other predatory fish that you want to cast this to. So yeah, please like and subscribe to this channel if you are interested to see more fly tying tutorials from Danish fly tying. Yeah. See you on the coast.